This podcast was created by fans for fans and is not affiliated with or sponsored by Hallmark or the Hallmark channel. This is Eric.
This is Sydney.
And this is Hallmark Mysteries.
And more.
Okay, well, we're really excited. We have a Hallmark legend with us today. A legend, Ron Oliver, director and writer for many, many Hallmark movies, as well as a couple of the mysteries, which is, as everyone knows, what we like to talk about. Well, thank you for joining us, Ron. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's my pleasure. Pleasure. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now you're out there in Palm Springs, right?
I am. Yes.
Okay. So we're probably having, I'm in Phoenix. We're probably having some pretty similar weather where now summer's tapping us saying, okay, we're getting ready to get warm.
That's it. Yeah. We have 102 today. So yeah, that's it.
So, oh, you guys hit 100 today?
Oh yeah. We've hit 100 a couple of days in a row.
Oh, you have?
Oh yeah.
I think today was the day we were supposed to, but I don't know if it has or hasn't been inside. So, okay. So one of the things that we like to do for all of our guests is we create a signature cocktail. And we follow you on Instagram and we know you do like your cocktail. So
I do.
I tell you what, a little bit of angst went into this because we wanted to give you something that we think would be delicious. And you have a little style, so we couldn't just do, a straight up like dirty martini or something like that. Well, it could be delicious. We felt we needed to go a little bit more. So what we did is we developed the Kincaid after one of our favorite characters, Carnegie Kincaid. And with that, it is a martini and it has 2 ounces of vanilla vodka, 3 ounces of pineapple juice, some champagne, and a maraschino cherry. So what you do is you put the vodka and the pineapple juice in the shaker, some ice, give it a good shake, pour it in the martini glass, top it off with that champagne, drop the cherry, which will go down the bottom, creates this nice little red glow and thing like that, and then bottoms up and enjoy it. So we thought it kind of, is a little bit different, a little bit fun, and that's how we kind of view you, fun.
I'm flattered that you would go to the trouble of creating a cocktail. It sounds great. I have a friend who loves pineapple martinis, so I'm going to I'll concoct that next time they're over, and we'll. Do you know the actor Udo Kier? You familiar with Udo Kier?
I am not.
Udo played Dracula in Andy Warhol's Dracula, and he played Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, and Udo's quite a well-known character actor, and he's a big pineapple martini fan, so I'll make a point of.
All right, well, yeah, you got that little vanilla hint to it, and then that champagne to top it off gives it a little bit of effervescence and, just a little bit different. Excellent. So hopefully when you guys have one, you'll share and you go, wow, this is fantastic. So
we will.
It is pretty good. We are doing this in the middle of the afternoon, and why I have nothing against day drinking. I did spend yesterday day drinking. Today I did not get a chance to make one, but I will rest assured, I think it's delicious.
Okay. So, I can't wait to try it. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So let's get going into it. So one of the things, and I saw you post this, I think it was today, right? Today is Alfred Hitchcock's, is it his birthday or? It's a milestone for Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, his passing. It was yesterday. It was an anniversary of his passing. It was like 43 years ago that Mr. Hitchcock passed.
Okay, so, I'm a huge fan of his movies as well. And, as time goes on, I would say younger people may not quite be, they see the black and white and just like can't do it. But tell me a little bit about why you're such a fan of Alfred Hitchcock. Because, once again, I'm just a schmo who watches movie. You're an actual director who, can appreciate him on many levels that I can't even be aware of.
Well, I mean, Sir Alfred essentially rewrote the grammar of cinema. He was a big proponent of subjective filmmaking. So when you're watching a Hitchcock picture, you're very often in the shoes of the protagonist. No more so than in Rear Window, where you literally are in that chair with Jimmy Stewart watching everything happen. So it's very subjective filmmaking. as opposed to the objective idea, the camera stays back a little bit and watches the world from sort of the God's eye point of view. Mr. Hitchcock said, let's go right inside it there and take you there. And Spielberg has followed that greatly. And I mean, many filmmakers have taken that to heart, but Mr. Hitchcock was the first one really to get us into that world. So you felt it. And from his earlier films, even from The Lodger, you were in it with the characters and you felt the things that were happening, because he would use the subjective camera point of view. So you felt what was going on. You'd see the actor reacting to something and then cut to what they're seeing. And that reaction, counter reaction would put you in that place. Plus the fact, the movies are wildly entertaining. And my mother swore for her entire life that she went into labor when they were at a drive-in showing of Psycho, which timed out about right in terms of when I was born. So she swore she went into labor during Psycho, and then I was born not shortly thereafter. So
a little tidbit for you. Psycho, the hotel where she goes to and gets killed, is right down the street from my house. I live in
cool.
I live in Central Phoenix, and that's right downtown Phoenix. So it's about, I don't know, 5 minutes right down the road. So every time I go by it, I have no idea, because obviously the outside doesn't really look anything spectacular.
Sure.
But for some reason I always think about that when I found out that was the building. So
that first hotel when the camera first goes in, yeah.
Yeah,
that's great. That's cool.
So now, do you remember as a kid what your first Alfred Hitchcock movie was, when you just all of a sudden were like, whoa?
It was probably Psycho.
A Psycho?
Because I remember it came on television. I would have been maybe 6 years old, perhaps, and it came on television, and there was a big disclaimer on the TV that, you know, you shouldn't watch this if you're easily shocked or horrified or have a weak heart or something. And I remember my parents watching television. Oh yeah, my parents watching on television in the living room, in the family room. And I got out of bed. I remember this. Wow, I haven't thought of this in a long time. Got out of bed and walked down the hall and like kind of listened around the corner to some of the stuff. And I can remember seeing those opening titles with the sort of fragmented, zigzagging pattern of Saul Bass with Psycho. I remember seeing that and seeing the opening shots in the hotel that you're speaking of in Phoenix. And that stuff. And then I think they came and said, no, to bed. So that was that. But that was like the first experience of it. And then as an adult, you know, they did a reissue of the pictures back in the early to mid 80s, probably early 80s, because they had been off the radar for a long time. And then they did a big reissue and a restoration of the films like Rear Window and North by Northwest and Suspicion and Strangers on a Train and so on. And then we got to see them again on big screens. They did a re-release of all that stuff and Vertigo. I mean, it was amazing. So that's really kind of where it kicked in for me, because I had been writing for a while by then, and knew of his stuff, but it wasn't easily accessible because they weren't even released on VHS back at that time, because that was like early 80s, and that hadn't really kicked in terms of the release of these films. So anyway, so that's when it sort of hit.
Which is your favorite?
Oh, that's like asking, you know,
you got to pick one. Everyone has their favorite kid. Come on, they may lie, but they do.
I would say North by Northwest is the one that I go back to all the time. I love North by Northwest. When we did Christmas at the Plaza, the movie we did for Hallmark, I wrote and directed that thing, and there are all kinds of little mentions in there about North by Northwest, because part of that movie takes place at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. So we put little inside jokes in it that actually the fans found. We got lots of emails and lots of messages from people because they found little jokes, little Hitchcockian jokes inside the movie. So that was kind of a pleasure. So
all right, yeah, I agree. I'm a Rear Window. It just really freaks.
Oh yeah,
I shouldn't say freaks me out, but the angst. I just felt so much angst in that movie. So
it's just a great film. I mean, they're all, you know, even a bad Hitchcock movie is better than most of the films you're going to see anyway. So, you know.
I agree. So you were talking about like being the little kid and, you know, when you're 6 or 7 or like peeking through my parents took me to see Jaws when I was 7, of which, we were talking to Spielberg, the head down underwater and coming out. To this day, I still have a major shark phobia. And, you know, in now modern days, like a parent who took their kid to see Jaws in their youth would be like ostracized. But I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Back in the 70s, at the, you know, that time, I think it was 70, 4, is whatever. We're going to see it, so you'll be emotionally scarred for life. Don't worry about it. But
and that the head pop out of the hull of the boat, the underwater head pop. You probably know this, but that was a reshoot that they did in Spielberg's pool.
Oh, I did not.
Yeah, because they needed an extra oomph, an extra bam moment in the movie, and I was like, well, what if we did this? And they went back and they did a reshoot, just like they built a hull and put it under the pool and did a little reshoot there in his pool. So.
All right. I did not see. I learned something fantastic. I plan to learn a lot of things today, but there we go. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. Okay.
Oh, that's good to hear.
So when you go through your IMDb, you have a very interesting career. You have a lot of like love and romance, but then you also have a lot of psychedelics in there and stuff. So do you have, I know we're talking Hallmark and stuff, but do you have like a preference? Do you like that light, fluffy stuff, or do you tend to like that little more dark, sinister type stuff when you're, just out there cranking out stuff?
It's funny. I like both. I really do. I mean, I love a good rom-com. But it has to be like the classic style of rom-coms. Like I love the Doris Day, Rock Hudson style of those films, those old-fashioned rom-coms, because they're just great fun. And I really enjoy that. I like the complexion of a romance can be really fun to play with and watch it happen, because they're going to get together. The trick is, how do you keep them apart to the end? I like that a lot. But I do. I mean, obviously I started in horror. And love it. I love horror movies and I love thrillers. I love if you can give me a good comic thriller with a romantic subplot, I'm in heaven. If you get the young lovers who've just met and their meet cute is a dead body and they got to get rid of it, that to me is, I'm in.
That's fantastic. Well, we will, when we talk a little bit later, we will be talking a little bit about just that. So was the Wedding Planner Mysteries, was that your first Hallmark project?
No. My first Hallmark was the first Hallmark thing I did was I think it was Bridal Fever.
Okay.
Back in I don't remember when it was, but Bridal Fever with Andrea Roth and Delta Burke.
Okay.
And that was fun. Yeah, that was the first one I did. So
okay, all right, I'm not familiar with that one. I knew this, 2014. Yeah, I guess there are a handful before then. So, but
things didn't really. I mean, Hallmark didn't really start firing on all cylinders until about, I want to say 2010, roughly 2009, 2010. They sort of went, let's start really, let's reinvent the rom-com genre. Let's do it for us and let's do it in this way. And they really started to pound them out then, which was great fun, because it was like the old studio system where you're literally, I did 5 movies one year, because you're just jumping into it and, okay, here's a project, you want to do it? And I guess it wasn't like the studio system, because if you didn't do it, you get, suspended, but we didn't get that problem.
Yeah.
But no, you jump in
modern day.
You get these you get these great projects and you get to go from picture to picture to picture. And it was great. Like I had a crew, I had a DP that I worked with on 12, 13 movies in a row, basically. And we just worked together, a director of photography, we worked together a lot. And it was just great, because you got to really, you got to work on your craft, which was terrific, because you learn something new from every movie. And then you got to entertain people, which was fun. So,
yeah. Well, actually, it's funny you say that, because when we talked to Benjamin Ayers, that's what he had said, is that it has that feel of working at a he's not old enough to remember, but what he thinks of being the old studios, where, because they had the same group of actors is what he was talking about. So, and then you're saying the same sort of people behind the camera as well are probably all the same, and you get to know each other and work together multiple times.
It's great. So. The same. We had a lot of the same studio executives. I worked with the same network executives on the pictures. So and they knew what you liked. They knew what you did well, and they knew what you liked to do. And then they would bring the project to you and say, "How about this? How about that?" Or you could walk in with the project and say, "I've got an idea," and they trusted you to bring it to fruition. So.
All right. Well, I would say you also are, as I started with a Hallmark legend. Well, I guess I had to start somewhere, but you definitely have proven that you know how to make a good Hallmark movie. So I bet their trust level of you is probably a little bit higher than if I walked in with an idea, but I would hope so too. You're far more talented. But so I guess my question is, so since you have been there, since, close to the beginning or the beginning and to now, how has it really changed? Because movies now, we're just talking that the latest mystery that was out there, the cases of Mystery Lane, it had, as part of the core plot, it had a guy who was secretly gay having an affair with a coworker who was married to a woman, and they had an open marriage. Now that's not something that really would have happened in Hallmark a few years ago. And I'm just using that as an example of
Yeah,
just
no, it's
differently, right? And then
yeah, no, you're
the
absolutely right.
diversity, but there's also
Yeah.
got to be a lot of other things that are just different because they are a machine at producing 95 or whatever it is movies a year. So how has it been different from going back in time to like what it is now?
I think probably what it is now is it reflects I would say it reflects real life maybe a little more in terms of the intricacies of the human heart, because I love the twist. That's a great, I don't know that story, I don't know them at all,
Okay.
but that's a great fun twist. It's very Death Trap, but it's sort of I guess you had to expand the palette over there. It had to happen because you couldn't continue in that kind of vacuum sealed world that Hallmark existed in for a very long time, and successfully, But as things changed, and it wasn't just Hallmark's changed, it's also the culture has changed, and for the better, because suddenly people woke up and one day and went, my neighbors are this, and my friends are this, and the world is bigger than you can maybe necessarily perceive. And I think that scared a lot of people because the idea of new and different and change freaks people out a little bit. But I like that they've done that at Hallmark. I think it's really important to see it happen, and it's definitely a change for the better. That's for sure.
Well, I've talked to, a couple other people. I'm not, do you know Tracy Andreen?
I don't know.
Okay, she's written a bunch of Hallmark movies, but she was, and then a couple other people who have just been, whether they've been behind the scenes, but they have said that also there's just a lot more freedom to do things where it was pretty much you had the formula and you had to kind of stay in there. And you being a writer, which is a very creative profession, was it like kind of when you got the chance to be a little more free, was it just kind of like a big sigh of like, wow, I can like push boundaries that I never could do before? Or is it pretty much, it is a Hallmark movie at the end of the day, so you kind of do stay within a certain, rails there?
It's interesting, my experience with Hallmark was, I think, different than a lot of people's, because I didn't ever feel particularly constrained, because there are story mechanics that are simply, that's how a story works, and I've never particularly felt any serious pushback. They occasionally, they'd say, well, maybe that was too passionate a kiss when you're directing a scene or whatever, like little things like that. But that was because Hallmark at the time had a perception of their audience that was not necessarily entirely accurate. Their audience has changed, obviously, too. Their demographic has changed a little bit. They've tried very hard to age down demographically. But I remember actually really feeling terribly constrained, because you're going, this is the brand.
Right.
It's like when I go and I would make a movie over at Universal, and the Universal brand for the division I was doing movies there, their brand was this, and so when you're over there you do this, and over there you do that. When you go like Lifetime, I did a bunch of Lifetime thrillers and had a blast, right? And they were fun, but they were also another brand. So if you're aware of, it's like going to Warner Brothers back in the day, in the 30s and 40s, was a gangster studio, and MGM was the musicals, and Universal was the horror and monsters. So every different network has its own brand, and Hallmark's brand was always, happy endings.
Right.
Always. So I never really felt constrained, to be honest with you. I occasionally you'd go, there's got to be a way to do this. It's like the old days when the in the old censorship days in the 30s, you know, in the Hays Code and everything, and you had to curtail some elements of a story in order to work in that mold, which sometimes made you more creative, because you're like, okay, I'm forced to do this. I have to figure a way to tell this story in this way, if that makes sense. And so, so there was a certain amount of, you know, here's the box. You can do anything you want to the box, but this is the box. Everything has to fit inside the box. And when they say now we're going outside the box, truthfully, it's all just window dressing anyway, really, because all the elements and the diversity and so on and so forth, which is very important because obviously it reflects the world we live in. But at the same time, you fall in love with somebody, you fall out with somebody, you know, you're going to murder somebody. It doesn't really matter who they are. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. It matters how it works. So you can put any character into the mix you want to, and everybody goes, "Ooh, how brave and interesting." Not really, because at the end of the day, you still have to get rid of the dead body. So you know.
I love that. That's awesome. All right. So you, as we've been talking, you write and you direct. I imagine that there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of very different, you know, diversity of, or diverse, I don't know that's the right way to put it, but they're very different skill sets, right? Do you find like it's very helpful that you're a writer when you're directing because you kind of can do that? Or are you like, oh, doing your own like rewrites because you know how to do it and you know how to make it work better?
Yeah, I generally speaking, if I haven't written the script, the original script to direct, I almost invariably rewrite whatever has been given to me in a script, or come in as a rewrite guy. Because very often, certainly with the Hallmark movies, they would come to me with a script that they've been sitting on for a while and go, "This isn't working. We need to fix this. Can you help us?" And then direct the movie. And so I would do that. And it's always better because you're on set. Usually what happens is many writers, not all writers, but many writers have absolutely no idea how physics work, or the real world, or human emotions, or relationships, or really physics. So trying to explain to somebody on a film set that you have to walk from here, from this chair over to that door to make the scene work. If I don't in my head know why they have to do that, it's really hard for me to explain to the actor why they have to do it. And those are the kind of things that in a screenplay, you need to have those questions answered. All the motivations have to be answered in the script. So when I'm standing on a set, I'm not trying to work out the story on set. I've already done it at my laptop, if that makes sense. Because you just go through the script and make, here's the movie, now it works. Then you go on the floor and you shoot it. And that's my preferred method, is to walk on set and not have any questions at all. Just go, this is exactly how it works. And the actors I've worked with have always seemed to appreciate the idea that we don't stand there looking at each other going, well, I don't know how this works.
Wait, does that actually happen?
Oh God, yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes. There are legendary stories. And not just in the Hallmark world, but in every possible film world, of standing around set trying to figure something out because the script doesn't work, and everybody knows the script doesn't work, but they went to the floor, as to say, they go to the set with the script ready to shoot because they're like, okay, we have an air date, or we have a premiere date, we got to make this movie, we have the actors, we have the script, and like, script doesn't work. I know, we'll make it work, we'll figure it out as we go. And you're like, oh, will you though, really? And then you end up going in overtime, and it's crazy. So I've tried in my work, I've tried with varying degrees of success. I have tried to make sure that never happens. So
okay, wow.
Yeah,
Wow. I'm just thinking of one, almost the comical scene of just seeing people trying to figure it out, but then also in the back of my mind just seeing that little, not the cash register, but the expense of just standing around trying to figure it out.
Oh yes.
So
yes,
that's interesting.
Urban days back way back in the day, early on, when I was doing a lot of episodic TV shows. You would get a script come in from the writers who clearly had, and they were very strict about this. The writers would send a script to the set, and the producers would be there, and they're like, no, this is the script, this is gospel, it must be shot this way, and you couldn't change it. So you'd stand there and go, how is this supposed to work? Would someone like to explain to me how this physically happens? Because there's no logic to it at all. And you would stand there, and there were days back in those early days when you would just stop and you would clear everybody off the set except for yourself and the writer and the actors and say, okay, writer explained to me. I brought one down one day. I brought a writer from upstairs down to the set and said, show me how this is supposed to work. And the guy's like, oh, I didn't really think it was like, no, show me how it works, because you wrote it and I have to direct it. And that's a long time ago, and I haven't dealt with that sort of thing in decades, but I remember those days and going, ugh, yeesh. So that's what that was. And that was a good lesson, because then you go, I will never go on a film set without a script that works 100%.
So I guess that it does definitely help your writing, the fact that you have directed it, that you probably write very differently than a lot of writers do. So even if you're writing something that you're not directing, it's probably appreciated.
Yeah, I think so. I've had those things said to me, and I learned more from the very first movie I ever made. I didn't direct it, and then the director made the picture. It came back, didn't quite work, partly because of my writing, because it was my first script and it was stuff I should have done better. But then also the director wasn't necessarily the guy for the kind of material it was. So it came back, and the director had long gone, and the producer, and not dead, he just went on another show.
Right.
And the producer and I sat down with the editor, and he said, okay, go figure this out. So we cut the movie down to the absolute like bare bones of what it needed to be in terms of a story. And I learned so much about writing from that experience, because you cut out all this stuff that you put into the script thinking was like, oh, and it was unnecessary, and took it all out and took it right down to the bones, and then rebuilt the thing, and then did reshoots to bring the movie back to what it needed to be. And that was a massive learning curve for me. And I was like 25, but that was a massive learning curve. And it changed the way I wrote scripts. It changed the way I saw movies from that point on. So for better or for worse. I mean, I'm no genius, but it was a good learning curve for that moment. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we are a mystery focused podcast, and maybe I can stretch it to say that, hey, this is a mystery, but one of my favorite Christmas movies is one of yours. It's A Timeless Christmas, and it has Aaron Cahill in it, who I absolutely adore. Aaron Cahill. So even though it has nothing to do with the mysteries, but I can say it was a mystery of kind of a sense, right? Can you just tell me a little bit about that movie, and how just some stories about that one, mostly about Aaron Cahill?
I love making that movie. So Aaron and I hadn't worked together before, but the male lead in it was a guy named Ryan Pavey, right. And Ryan and I had made Christmas at the Plaza, and then like bonded during that experience and became fast friends, and we still are. And that picture came along, and they had a script that wasn't working, but they had the original book. So they said, why don't you take this thing and figure it out? And the fellow who wrote the original draft of the script, who has just passed recently, unfortunately, was a wonderful, wonderful writer, and he loved the story, but he didn't, the mechanics of the story were, I think, eluding him a little bit. So, and I got fresh eyes, so I jumped in. I said, yeah, I'll do it. If I can have Pavey in the lead, I'll totally do it. So we'll give you Pavey, and you're going to have Aaron Cahill. So I'm excited. I got my two leads. So and then obviously Nelson Wong is Kenny Kwan. So I've got those three people in the movie. So then I take the book, I deconstruct the thing, go back to the book, and we were living in a hotel because our house was undergoing a renovation. So we were living in a hotel at the time here in Palm Springs. I remember sitting there and sitting in the hotel in the room, tight. And I remember taking the thing apart and just thinking, okay, what are the elements that really make this work? And what was great was being able to, in my head, see Aaron in the lead and Ryan in the lead, and be able to put those things together as I went through rewriting the script. And that was during COVID. That was like right in the heat of the pandemic. That was the first movie I did coming back out of the pandemic, because pandemic started like middle of March of 2020. And we were back on the floor on that movie in July of 2020 up in Vancouver. So it was, pretty soon in. But making it was great, because we shot it in this big, beautiful mansion in Vancouver, right in downtown Vancouver. Shot the whole thing in it, except like one day we went out to a house out in the boondocks someplace. But it was great. And I mean, Pavey and I have a shorthand. Okay. So then during the making of it, we were staying in a hotel in downtown Vancouver, and Pavey's upstairs from me, and we had balconies, and we weren't supposed to like see each other because we were supposed to be in quarantine. So we couldn't actually go visit each other, but we would like raise and lower, like if I was out of gin, he would lower a bottle of gin down to me. or if he needed to like take away food, I would like, put up to him. So we were able to, and we would talk back and forth up and down the balcony and talk about the story and like what we're going to do with the script and everything. And then Aaron came along, and then so we had to be like really isolated. So it was me, Pavey, Nelson, Aaron's husband, and I think that was it. And like we could hang out together because we were all in the bubble because we quarantined for 2 weeks, but we couldn't really hang out with other people. So we have to, eat in restaurants together by the window and all that crazy stuff that happened during the pandemic. So we became really close during that experience. And it to this day, we still talk on the phone, everybody. It was a really great bonding experience, an unusual filming experience, to be sure, because it was a weird time because you're all masked up and it was hard to communicate. But the movie came out really well. I'm very proud of that picture because it was made under difficult circumstances, but I think it's very romantic. And it's funny because there was the only criticism I ever heard of it was people said, well, I wish they'd gone out someplace else, that beyond the house, and he would have gone out into the world. I said, well, yeah, we would totally have done that if everything wasn't closed because people had COVID. So, there was that. I think we did a good job of that picture given we had to work with.
Oh, like I say, it's one of my favorite. I loved it. And, it's funny that you mention it. I didn't actually really think about it being that you didn't go out to other places, because obviously the house was such a big part of the story.
Yeah.
That it wasn't like I wasn't needing like the little bakery or anything like that. But like I say, now that you mention it, next time I watch it, I will be like, it is all in the house, isn't it?
Yeah. No, we went to this little the downtown, the little downtown village, which was actually a museum in Vancouver. So again, everything was contained in this environment, and it was a really interesting time to make a picture. So.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you guys had started. I thought it was like the fall before you started shooting again. So it's July. So that means everything was hardcore rules at that point.
Yeah, we were like, you literally would come out of the hotel, get into the van. You just sit in the back of the van with your mask on, the windows all open, the driver takes you to a place, and you had to drive separately. Like we'd all be together in a van talking about the day and then get there, but we couldn't even do that. So it was really crazy. And there's still, until I think middle of May of this year, they're still wearing masks on film sets up in Canada for sure. The last one I did was in Greece, and we didn't mask up down there.
Both times of the wedding veils, the Allison Sweeney ones and Victor Webster's were my favorite of both sets of the trilogy.
Oh, nice.
There. So,
well, we had a good time making that. That was an amazing adventure.
So, okay. All right. So now we're going to get back, and we're going to get back into the mystery world that we like to talk about. And it's funny because as you were describing earlier, sort of the physics of a script and some sort of making things happen, we're going to talk about wedding planner mysteries. And we just reviewed, recapped wedding planner mysteries and picture perfect mysteries, which coincidentally wasn't planned, but are both movies and series that you had directed. And so that's when I was like, wait a minute, let's reach out and see if he'll talk to us. So I greatly appreciate it. But wedding planner mysteries, both Sydney and I really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun with it, but there also seemed to be a lot of chaotic humor, elements in it. So I'm wondering if this was a movie where you were handed a script that you were trying to make things work that maybe didn't fit on the paper, because there were like some things that we watched and we're like, when we said it, you said you kind of have to like just suspend some things, because if you dive into like, wait, how did this happen? It just didn't make sense. But the overall, what happened was fun and entertaining, but it was like definitely, a difficult one to, dissect. So was that kind of like the script you were dealing with there?
Well, you basically just nailed it. So what happened on that movie was they had a script. It was an outside company came to Hallmark with a script, Wedding Planner Mystery, because they were looking for a mystery wheels. And they brought this script in, and it was an incoherent mess. And the network said, "Okay, well, we're gonna fix it." So they gave notes to the writer and the producer of the thing, and said, "Okay, just fix that up." So where did we shoot that thing? Was that Vancouver? It was in Vancouver. so I'm like, okay, sure, they're going to fix the script, because I read it. And I was like, well, I'm not a big whodunit guy. I prefer that I like to know who did it, and then I get to watch it get, dissected during the movie. But anyway, in this case, I said, sure, why not? And then Erica Durance was cast in the thing, and I really love Erica. She's fantastic. So let's have a little fun. We'll do it. So we get up there, and the script comes back from rewrite land, and the writers haven't addressed any of the issues, and it's still an incoherent mess. But by then, we're 3 weeks away from shooting. So they're like, okay. And normally what happened is I'd jump in, I would rewrite the thing, figure it out. And would it be genius? And no, but it would at least work. So I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. But the producers didn't want me to do that, because the writer was a friend of one of the producers. And they're like, no, just give us some notes. So, okay, here are the notes. 10 pages of notes later. Here are your notes. Fix it. Script comes back again, still doesn't work. So by then it's too late. So I'm like, okay, we'll figure this out. Let's just go. And they cast Karen Holness. First time I worked with Karen. Karen comes on board. I've got my DP. I've got a bunch of people I know, because it's a crew I have up in Vancouver. So we're like, okay, this is going to be nuts, but let's see what happens. Because what's the worst that could possibly happen? So we go to the thing. We start making the movie. And it is literally like, these scenes are just incoherent. And you're trying to figure out how to... So I get a phone call about 3 days into the shooting of this thing, because the rushes have started going back to the network. And I get a phone call from one of my executives. He goes, what is happening? What is this script? I thought you were going to rewrite it. And I said, I tried, and they wouldn't let me do it. Who's they? The producers. They wouldn't let me do anything. So I'm just trying to make the movie work. He's like, oh my God, okay, I'll call you back. So then about 5 days into the shoot, and it's only a 15-day shoot.
Right.
About 5 days into the shoot, they're like, okay, so go ahead, you fix it. And I said, okay, it's a little late in the game right now, because we're a third of the way into shooting, but we'll play as we go along, see if we can't find the answers to things. And there was just a bunch of nonsense. But anyway, so we make the movie. So then the movie's done, and it's like, oh my God, the movie ran, they're supposed to be 85, 86 minutes, these movies. I think the movie ran at like 99 minutes, some insane long film. And you go, oh my God. So we're in the editing room, and, trimming, trying to make the thing work. And I remember the producer, who wouldn't have let me do the rewrite before, comes to me and says, how do we fix this? What do we do? And I said, well, we'll do this, this, and this. And then you can send it to Hallmark, see what they think. So then the notes come back from Hallmark, and they're like, what is going on? Like, it doesn't make sense. So then I said, okay, what if we just do a bunch of voiceover narrative, like a old-fashioned detective movie?
Right.
We'll do that. Let Erica do the voiceover, and I'll just, write a bunch of voiceover that sort of addresses the nonsense that you're seeing on screen, and do it with kind of an ironic, semi-detached voice from her, which she kind of did really well. And then they put it together, and then by the sheer magic of cinema, the thing kind of worked, and people actually really liked the movie. So we were all kind of in shock when it worked, but on the flip side of it, it was, one of those really great adventures where you come out of it and go, boy, you can fix things, can't you? So
the whole voiceover was a 11th hour, or actually not even 11th hour. It's a 13th hour.
13th hour, my friend. Oh, yes, it was. Because that movie was, that print was locked. And we're like, what are we going to do? Well, I'll do it. And, and it was funny because the producer had come to me, and he's a really good guy. Actually, the producer, really good guy. Came to me and said, can you do this? He said, we don't have any money to pay you to do this thing. And I was like, you know what? I'll just fix it. Don't worry about it. We'll make it work. Because I love Erica, and I love Karen, and you want the actors to look good. Because this is the thing, the audience, when they watch a picture, they relate to the actors they're seeing on screen, and to them, to much of the audience, is like, the actors are making it up as they go along. They're saying these words from their own
Right.
So you want the actors to look good. You want the performers in the movie to at least be well represented. You don't want them to look like they're stuck in a turkey. So you got to fix it. So
yeah, well, like I say, it was chaotic, but we had to say, like, when we were reviewing it, it was kind of funny, because we were like, not sure how to review this one, because we shouldn't like it as much as we do.
Yeah.
But it just came across as so much fun. And part of it too, like you said, Erica was just adorable in the movie. Like and it's because most of the roles we see her in Hallmark, she tends to be a much more serious person. She doesn't really get to show that comedic side of her. And like I say, it's a shame, because she does have a very nice comedic flair.
She does. She's very funny. And And it's funny, I think what you're feeling when you watch that thing is how much, because like we literally were laughing all the time. Like we're going, this is crazy. And there was a chaotic energy and a chaotic humor to the stuff. Because if a scene wasn't working, we would just throw something. I'd go, well, let's come up with some bits of business or some gag or something that will make it make sense and make it all kind of play. Because at least it's entertaining. And that's really what happened with that movie. And I think that's why people ended up, and why you're reacting to it the way you are. It's just because we had such an incoherent, crazy time making it. So much, and it was fun. It was the energy and the fun of it all was really carried it through. So
now I've been trying to lately, the mysteries that are related off of the book, read the book as well. And one thing I've discovered is, as writers tend to take like, I don't know, 4 scenes of a book and turn it all into the mystery. And the books tend to have nothing to do with the actual movie when we make a movie off of it. Was the Wedding Planner mystery, was it supposed to be a more of a comedic type mystery, or is it just kind of that's based on what you had? This is the direction we're going.
Yes. I think that's your second part was correct, because I don't remember. I guess it was a book. Was it a book? I had no idea. Okay. Because all I ever read was the script.
But that wasn't intended to be like a humorous mystery.
I don't think it was supposed to be as humorous as it turned out to be.
At least not intentionally.
Not intentionally. No, I don't think it was supposed to be as humorous as they thought, as it ended up being. So,
all right. One of our my favorite lines in it was when going brain dead on what her name is, the competitive wedding planner, when she gets knocked out. And when Erica's calling 911, it's like, a woman in her 50s. What? I'm 39. That movie, that line was brilliant.
That was one of mine. Because, because it's an old Jack Benny joke, right? I'm 39. And I totally had to do that. I remember that moment now. I used to lay on the floor. I love that actress. Was that Karen Kruper? I think it was Karen Kruper. But she's laying on the floor. Yeah, that was a funny bit. I'm 39.
Yeah, I love that line. So one of the things, and this gets back to maybe the chaotic, Sydney's favorite scene in there was when when Erica's driving the van down, the brakes go out, and it's just sort of going there, and all the stuff in the van's like flying forward and getting all over her and stuff. Was that something that was like part of this script, or was that something, once again, where you just thought up it and said, hey, make it work? Because it does seem like it was kind of out of control, right?
Yeah.
And that was the humor of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. We just, again, that was just a bit of business we threw in, because probably on the page it said, she drives down the thing, the brakes go out. And having the brakes go out, like, that's a thriller moment. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to crash into a tree or whatever. But if you have crap falling all over the place as you're doing it, then that moves it into comedy. So again, a comic thriller with romance in it. I'm
yeah. Loved it. Love it. Okay. So last thing about that one was, you had Andrew Walker pretty, I would say, earlier in his career. When you were working with him, did you like look at this guy and go, damn, this guy is going to end up being like one of the kings of Hallmark? Could you just sense it from him in that movie?
You could. And Andrew and I did that one, and we did a movie called A Date with Love or something. It had been called Promposal originally, and he came back in on that one too. Yeah, you could see, because he's got that. He's the boy next door kind of a guy, and that's what they love at Hallmark. They like the boy next door who's not terribly threatening, handsome, romantic, charming, that stuff. So, and Andrew's all that stuff. He's actually Andrew's a great guy. He's the real deal. He's a very wonderful, wonderful man too. So,
because it's funny when you see him, because he just looks so young. Well, they both look so young in that movie.
What year was that? Was that 2012, 2014? 2014. Wow.
I think it was yes, either 12 or 14.
I don't.
So yeah. Oh, well, it was a decade ago at least.
A decade ago. Yeah.
And it was funny. I didn't even recognize that as Erica at first until I looked up the role, just because, once again, she was so much younger than she is now. And once again, the woman's just drop dead gorgeous, beautiful. But
yeah, she's a beautiful young lady.
So it's funny. It's kind of, you'll answer this. Do you think that could have had the potential to turn into a series, or was it just because of the chaos that was a one and done, and let's have fun and move on? with better, if you say you'd take over the writing, do you think it had
If
legs?
well, if someone had, if I, you know, I don't know. Probably, because there's always something. But see, I'm not big on sequels because I think that if you tell a story really well, it has a beginning and a middle and an end. And unless you're gonna I like a contained world for a story, and something like that had a nice ending. Like it
Right.
finished up nicely, and then you go, okay, that's all you really need to know. The character, Erica's character in the movie, it's a fun character for sure, but I think at a certain point you're going to get into the Angela Lansbury scenario where every time she goes to plan a wedding, somebody ends up dead. You're starting to go, maybe she's the one doing it. So, I think that's a contained environment that maybe wasn't going to work over and over and over again, I think. So
that's like the Aurora Tea Garden with its like 20 some episodes. I'm like, I don't want to hang out with her because odds are I'm going to end up dead.
You'll be end up dead. Yeah.
All right. Well, you did do a series though with Picture Perfect, and that was with 3. And I have to say, when I first watched them a few years ago, it may have been when they first came out, I wasn't like in love with them by any means. I was like, and then we rewatched them because we were going to review them. And I have to say, I totally saw a whole bunch of stuff that I just didn't the first time absorb. And one of them is just how stylized that movie was, whether it be the dress in it, the music, the scenery. It just was an extreme, and like the color palette and everything. It was just really a stylized movie. And as I walked through it, I appreciated it the second go around so much more. Like, I guess, were you trying to do this like real stylized movie, or is it just kind of like those things came together and that's what it was?
No, there's nothing just comes together in my world.
Well, Wedding Planner did.
Yeah, but even there's madness in it. Picture Perfect was so the Pennevegas, they're great friends of mine, and this project came along, the first script that they had, and I looked at it and I didn't really want to do at that moment. I was doing something else. I was like, no, I'll do it, but can I make it like the Pink Panther? Can I make it like a 1960s styled, if Breakfast at Tiffany's had a murder in the middle of it, can I make that style of movie? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I said, okay. So when we sat down, the very first meeting, we sat down, I opened up, there's the designer Saul Bass, who did Mr. Hitchcock's title cards and so forth. I laid this big book of Saul Bass's designs on the table at the first production meeting. I said, we're going to make the Pink Panther meets Breakfast at Tiffany's, and there's a murder in it, and it's going to be stylized. And like the font of the lettering we took from Hitchcock. The color palette was very specific. I picked them out, all the color palettes. We laid it all on the table. The production designer came in. We did everything in that thing was of that world, right down to the camera angles, like the structure and the scenes. And everybody knew it. They all got it. They got the feel of the movie. And there's a reason why there's only 3 of them, because that also has a beginning and a middle and an end. And you watch their relationship arc. And if you remember, the last shot of the first movie is the camera pulls back through the doorway, and we see Carlos sitting there playing his guitar by himself in the house. And we pull through the door, and he's framed perfectly in the middle, all alone by himself. And you go, and that's the end of the movie. The last shot of the third movie, the final movie of the bunch, it's exactly the same shot, only this time they're together painting the walls in that room he was alone in originally. We do the same pullback, same frame, everything, and we end with the 2 of them together now, because the whole movie's the 3 movies are a love story. And that's really what it is. The murders are inconsequential, but the romance, that relationship is the whole thing of it. So yeah, that thing was stylized, and that was the whole point of it, was just to stylize the crap out of it. And the music selection was because I was driving over one morning when we started pre-production, and the producer on it, Jim Wilberger, and I've been friends a long, long time. And I got there and I walked in and I said, Jim, this movie is going to be a bossa nova. It feels like a bossa nova to me. 3 movements, and it's going to be a bossa nova. Let's make it like, that's the music. And so we got the composers, like the opening title music for that thing. We got these great composers to come in, and I said, I want a theme song from like a 1960s spy movie. Make it like that. And that they did a great job with that. So everything about it was designed. It was all very, very stylized.
Okay. Well, like I said, when I first saw it, I missed it. Upon watching it again, totally got it. And we did actually when we had the review, we had another Hallmark fan who's got her own podcast, Dear Hallmark. I'm not sure if you know Dara or not, but it's her favorite mystery, and that's one of the things we all were commenting on. It was just how much style was just in this movie. It's funny, you kind of like addressed the next two questions I had. One of them that I felt, and I guess you did your job well, was the ending of it when they were painting. Because we were, at the people are always like, oh, they're going to be more, going to be more. And the thing that I felt was that was such a like beautiful ending, because they were, typically we always have to have the kiss at the end, right? Which we didn't get. But the painting side by side quietly, just the unspokenness of it, I think was more intimate than a kiss. And it was a wonderful conclusion. And obviously, like I said, it was something that you had, and not to say you like are just randomly throwing shit at the wall, but it was obviously very thought out to be exactly that moment. And I'll say I did get it. And that was what I had talked about. I thought it was a beautiful, intimate, romantic ending. They didn't say a word. They just grabbed those brushes or roller, I forget which it was, and they're just side by side doing true blue, the perfect color kind of. So I totally got it. Now I will say I did miss the guitar tying the first episode in with the last one, but
Well, if you watch it again, you'll see the shots of the same composition. But thank you for that. I appreciate that you appreciate all that stuff, because it was a lot of thought went into that, obviously. And it's also, you were asking me before about Hallmark, how much freedom you have. I had complete freedom with those three movies. The scripts were what the scripts were. I think I might have tweaked the scripts a little bit, but I don't remember doing any significant work. I think I did a polish on them just for pacing or maybe locations or something, but I didn't have to get deep and dig into it at all, because they were really well thought out. And then obviously Carlos and Alexa are terrific together and fun. And the music at the end, the last song in the three movies when they're painting, that song, You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You, is essentially the theme of all three pictures, because she's looking for love, as is he. And and it's sung by my friend Jessica Molaski, who is a wonderful singer. She's married to a jazz guitarist named John Pizzarelli. And we see them at the Carlisle in New York every year. But she's a wonderful singer, and I've used John's music in Christmas at the Plaza. So when it came time for this one, I thought I'm going to give Jessica a kick at it this time. So we went and got that song, and it was I think it worked really nicely at the end of the picture that way.
Yeah, I'll say it is definitely a home run, because one of the things, and not to knock Hallmark, but we'll knock them a little bit, is like the graphic artists, when they do something like make their little business card or the sign, they look like it was like the graphic design guy intern kind of just had to crank out something. And with their like the picture perfect, the signage they had, her car, like it was done so well, like the details of it were just really like not typical Hallmarky. And I don't mean to sound negative, because I love obviously Hallmark movies. You kind of know what you get. And that one was, this movie, just like I say, it was such a different level of any other Hallmark experience, I think, that I've really seen. So
that's very kind of you to say. And all of us thoroughly enjoyed making those three pictures. We loved every second of it.
And you kind of did touch on this a little bit, but one of the things, so Sydney sent me her question that she wanted me to ask of you. So she's a big fan of Palm Springs. She lives in Orange County. She goes out there and gets away all the time. And one of the things she really loves is that mid-century vibe that's in Palm Springs. And she really got that out of Pitch Perfect. So were you taking some of like Home and thinking,
oh yeah,
that's, you're taking it over to Rhode Island and that's what you were creating?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You're like, okay, let's, I'll bring it as I have, let's say, matured as a filmmaker.
You're 39, right?
Yeah, 39. Thank you. You find a freedom to express yourself in the work in a way that maybe earlier on you didn't necessarily. And then at a certain point in your life, you just go, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And so you just there's a freedom to it. And it started really some years back when I was doing the pictures at Universal, when I did the Beethoven movies and Big Fat Liar and all this stuff. They gave me so much freedom, and it really allowed you to exercise that muscle. So then coming back, when I did Christmas at the Plaza, every frame of that movie is, not to sound schmaltzy, but it comes from the heart, because every moment in that picture is something that meant something to me or to my husband or to our relationship with the Plaza. And so that experience was so exhilarating that you wanted to keep it going. And that's part of the reason why I think Timeless works well, and why the Picture Perfect Mysteries work so well, is because I had a bunch of people around me, a bunch of creatives around me with me, everybody was cooking on all 4 cylinders, or whatever, mixing that metaphor.
Right.
But we were all together on stuff, and everybody had a common vision for this thing. So, I mean, you're the director. The idea as a director is that you take all these really talented, creative people around you, and you direct them to the goal of the movie, whatever that goal is. So,
okay, no, like I say, it's fantastic, and it's funny how like I said, the first time I saw it, I just missed it. Maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind, or just wherever. And then that second one, I just was like, boom, hit with it. And so, like I say, it was really good. So, all right.
great.
Well, I'm going to wrap up now. Is there anything that you've got coming up that you can share with us, whether it be Hallmark or just other projects?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you can talk about stuff that you never know what's going to happen or not, especially where we are right now.
Yeah.
I'm developing an R.L. Stine project right now, the guy who wrote obviously Goosebumps and
Right.
that sort of thing, on Fear Street. We have a project together there. And there's a Christmas picture at Hallmark that I'm developing with a talented and a lovely writer producer named Anna Chi. And because I really wanted to do something, I kind of, I don't, not to disparage it, but I don't really want to go make a movie in some field in rural British Columbia. I've done that. I don't like doing it again. So I'm trying to find stuff like the Greek movie, which was like, yes, I will. Or
Right.
the movie we did we did Love in the Limelight with the Pen of Vegas.
Okay.
We did that in Utah. Again, gorgeous. So I'm interested in kind of like, let's go places interesting. I didn't get in the picture business to stand in a small warehouse someplace with a green screen. I want to go into the world and make movies with people and stuff, like tangible stuff. So that's kind of what we're looking at with the project with Anna, because we're going to set it in some Asian country, and as part of it's a family story. So, but yeah, there's a couple things floating around, but when I know what's going to go, when I get a phone call saying we're greenlit to do it, I'll let you know.
I greatly appreciate it. All right. Well, then when you, after you also have your Kincaid with your friend, let me know what he thought. All right.
I will be. I will. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. We'll talk to you.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.